Hey, good morning, guys. Good evening. Happy to see you here at Coaches Schnack. So today we are meeting Jeff and Mikki Martin. They are the founders of the BrandX Method, and they also are the founders of CrossFit Kids back in the days. So they're very ingrained into this health and fitness community, but most of all, they have done so much for thousands and thousands of kids. If you need to have help with any kind of, guidance, how to do a youth program or so on, you should check out BrandX Method and listen to this episode. Obviously, too, we talk a bit about kids and training, and we also talk about like what is required when you do a kids program, who is the right person for it, and so on. I wish you happy listening, and see you next time. Bye. Go, and we're here. Let's just jump into it. You were saying.
Well, you were saying that you asked a question about getting kids off of the screens and what the difference in what's going on with kids today, and having kids who are addicted to that. And I was just responding with, our professional history starts before that happened. So we started, when we started working with kids back a little bit before 2000, kids came in the gym and they were what you would call today athletic. Just the average kid walking through the door is athletic. They had an ability to do a number of skills and things, and you easily taught them to apply that to weightlifting or apply that to some other type of athletic endeavor. And then 2012 hit, and what we see, and Mikki does a better job of alliterating how this all occurred, but what we see is they got a computer in their pocket. Kids did. And that started to affect the quality of movement that the kids were partaking outside of the gym. And we started having to dissect the methodology of what we were teaching. So you couldn't just no longer teach, let's go teach the squat. You have to teach the component pieces first. Let's teach the hip hinge, because kids don't hip hinge anymore. They bend to the SI joint. And we need to, so practically it changed what we were doing because of what the kids were coming into.
We couldn't assume anything. We can't assume that they know how to walk correctly. And that sounds ridiculous, but it's true that we now see kids shuffle like old people do, where they lean forward to move the legs. There's no pulling. And it's horrifying to see at the level that it's happening and how fast it's happening. But it has caused us to look at everything we do, right? And say, okay, we have a developmentally appropriate starting point. Is it still relevant? Or do we have to go backwards? And we're already too irreducible pieces and parts of movement that we call movement skills that can't be reduced further. But if people aren't teaching those, and they're starting because they're still assuming sort of the old school, well, of course they can run, of course they can jump, of course they will have experienced these things. That's the scary thing, is no, they haven't. But they know this, and their neck's like this, and they've been sitting
20 years ago, kids came into the gym with movement experience. You can't assume that anymore.
Right. You cannot assume any movement experience.
And
it's scary.
But also, I mean, this is a topic that really fires me up too. I feel itching in my body just by hearing that, because it makes me almost, it makes me angry almost. But before I lose it here, I wanted to kind of step back a bit in the story. Is that what made you start with wanting to train with kids? Or,
I think we both have different, histories. Jeff's been a coach forever, his whole life, and an athlete. I long ago wanted to be in design, and I wanted to design toys for children just because I love children. And over time, when we started together, we were involved in a boxing gym back in the early 90s with some partners, and then opened our own martial arts, and then realized that you couldn't really be good at defending yourself unless you were fit. And so there was a progression there. But the focus on children for me has just always been, I love working with children. I think I'm maybe a frustrated teacher in a sense, you know. But I get to teach through movement, and but that's a different path than for you.
Yeah, and I always coached, and I was always in the martial arts, and so and very interested in teaching the kids side of the martial arts, and so we had a martial arts school, and we had a boxing gym, and then eventually we opened up our own school, and even though we had an adult side, we had big kids classes, 35 to 50, 60, little kids with their belts on and stuff. It was fun. And early on, we found CrossFit. The adults this was 2000. This was 2003.
Yeah, that's really okay.
And the adults around us would tell me, literally, "Have you seen yourself when you're done? Can't be good for you. You need to not. That can't."
And your wife, I'm pretty sure, said the same thing.
But our kids loved it, and they begged us to come to so I would pick my kids up from, when I would get off work, pick my kids up from school, we'd go over to the gym, they would work out with me. And this was like the summer of 2003. And pretty soon they were telling their friends, and so I was picking the kids up and their friends up, and they were coming to the gym, and we were working out together, and I was, making their workouts up, and then it was them telling the kids in the karate class, "Can we do the workouts with you?" And so it was all of this, and we were doing the workouts before as a warm up to the kids class, and that's kind of how we started with functional fitness in children, and then Greg Glassman asked us to develop CrossFit Kids, so we did, and
so we did,
and he probably didn't realize that we were, type A obsessive compulsive people about doing things, what's right, how and so it became our whole life. I don't. It became the focus of what we did, and then we found we started off the conversation talking about the kind of a cultural thing, the screens. One of the cultural things that we found was that because our kids did this stuff with us, and that it became a family thing. So, the kids were just as interested in fitness and how it applied then to their sports. And, "Dad, can you help me with? Son's going into wrestling. Dad, I want to. What can we do to help me be better at this? Another one's in soccer. What can we do to be better at this?" And it was a great bonding experience for the family. So the family never had those awkward experiences or years in the teens where the kids won't talk to the parents. Our kids wouldn't stop talking to our parents because they were, we were interested in what they were doing, and we had all those opportunities, which was,
Yeah, we're really lucky.
Really fortunate.
We had that common interest in vernacular, so we talk about the workouts.
But I think it comes down to, and this is me self-reflecting a bit, comes down to you being interested in them too, right? So
I was thinking about that.
So it becomes, and because I always see this common thing, like, the kids don't talk to you or whatever, and from my, like, all the books, whatever I've been reading, it usually comes down to, like, but are you really listening to your kids, or are you just trying to tell them do X?
I think we talked about the cultural changes for kids, but the cultural change for parents is just as rough. For us, when I shut the office door and locked it and said, "I'm done with my biotech job and I'm going home, I'm going to pick my kids up," my biotech job didn't contact me. it was going to be there again tomorrow morning when I got in the morning. I didn't have something ringing in my pocket or my emails going off or something that needed to happen, and so as the, you know, and so I was like, I get to go home, I get to see my kids, I'm picking my kids up, we're going to go do this thing together, and then, you know, my wife's going to come over, we're going to do this, we're going to teach the classes, we're going to go home and have dinner together. That all of that has kind of been turned upside down now. I want to say it was easy for us.
Yeah, it wasn't. There wasn't a constant distraction or interruption, or let me just check this, or.
Right now, it feels like it's also getting worse after 2 years of COVID now.
Right.
Because a lot of people having like home office, and you don't have like a beginning of the day when you go to the work and you're going home. So now it's like. Yeah, it's like nothing anymore.
There were boundaries then on work and home life, and there are no boundaries anymore. And so a parent, I feel like let's cut some parents some slack. Yeah. But what they can do is start to create boundaries for themselves.
Yeah, sure.
And for their kids on usage, so the addiction isn't
as prevalent or
a constant need like you were talking about. You know. Like, I just want to get to my phone.
Yeah, and I have so many things I'm thinking of that I'm like, how are we going to be able to talk about all these things in this session? But when you had your speech, I was like, my mind was like, okay, I had 5 content ideas immediately, like how to get your kids off to, you know, of the phones or a computer, like how do you handle screen time with your kids? Because parents are, in some sense, they are also as lost. Like, oh, how should I do? And I had this discussion the other day with good friends of mine, and they're very like organized with their kids and so on, but their kids were like I was there for dinner with my daughter, and their kids started to, like, at 5:30 p.m. like, can we watch something? And they were like, and they have screen time, so they have locks on those screens, but they were like constantly nagging, and they were like, oh, how do you handle that? And I said, oh, I haven't thought about that, but we actually have like a no screen during the week time rule. And since we put that in, life is easier because the kids are not asking all the time. They know they have like just a Saturday, Sunday mornings. That's it.
But how old are your kids?
So I have 18 something months, 4.5 and 8.
Yeah, okay.
So they're not in this like TikTok age.
So, but problematically then, when you get further, the kids get a little further, a little older, what's happening now is that the school is assigning homework for them that requires a screen. So they have to have a screen. And you know, stepping back further to your first question, how do you get them off the screen? This is a cyclical problem. Mikki can speak to physical literacy much better than I can. But the one thing that we talk about is that you know, if you're competent at something, you're confident you can do it, and then you're motivated to do that thing. Very few people, if they find themselves like, I don't know what to do here, are motivated to try that. And so kids in the past were very physically literate. They were competent. They knew, oh, I can do this, I can try this, I can do this, all these things. So part of the problem now with the screens is because they're on the screen so much, they're not outside playing, they're not outside experiencing things, they are not having the play experience and the movement experience that they had in the past. So they're not competent in movement and
feel intimidated by
and so
it.
they feel intimidated. So we have a dual problem, and it's cyclical problem. It is the more time I spend on the screen, the less time I'm moving, the less I'm competent. The more
I would say it's
confident, and we just start. It just kind of so I'm going to stay on the screen because of these things, and it's this kind of thing we need to break.
I think it's physical and mental because it's just like with the physical preparedness that is lacking. It's the mental preparedness to. This is what somebody talked about up there was like, I see increased amount of kids with having special needs. And, you know, in one sense, yeah, but the prescriptions are kind of raging in one sense with all kind of different letters that are kind of thrown out on the kids. Whereas like back in the days, it might just be, yeah, this is a, you know, a bit more restless kid or whatever it might be. But it's easy to sometimes put the label so you can say, oh, this is because my kid is different. But I would say, and I would argue that since we lack, like you're bound to the screen, so you're not engaging with people with real conflicts in that sense, and you're not involved in this like one-on-one discussions with people and the emotional load that requires. So you get easily much more offended by like, because you can't, you haven't practiced keeping your face.
So you're moving on the edges of the subject of play and the social and mental benefits of free play with peers. It's massive, and a lot of the research about that comes out of the Nordic countries. Netherlands, I think the University of Utrecht is there. Tons of research on this stuff, and the psychosocial benefits of learning to interact with others in an environment where there are no rules, so you have to cooperate, because anybody can go, I don't like those rules, and leave, right? So it forces these interactions, the cooperation, it forces exploration and experimentation to a level that kids then have to learn to adapt to new things. If they never have those experiences, they're finding that they socially then can't adapt to new situations, period. We have a whole generation now that are like, I don't want to try that because I have no idea what's going to happen. And because they've never tested something happening, you know, in a situation where they didn't know what the rules were going to be.
Not being in control all the time.
Right. So it's like if I've never had that happen, I'm more and more reserved. So what you're saying is about them not behaving in certain ways that we kind of formally would expect that they would develop these things. Now we can't even, not only can we not assume physical movement, we can't assume the kind of psychosocial adjustment and learning that was previously happening when kids organically were out playing together, throwing a ball, you know, an uneven ball that was half broken against a fence, and which direction is it going to go? But just how do I interact with the people that were all coming together to do something? That's not, everything is, well, we go to a field and there's rules and whistles and lines, and I know exactly how it's going to happen.
Or I
stay
home and I sit on my computer.
Right.
So there is no longer.
But think how safe that is.
There is no longer. I think what you're getting to is you have the two extremes. We go to do a sport where there's rules and an adult leading it, or you sit in home and you do the computer or your screen time. What we're lacking now and what's causing these mental issues and these psychological issues and the physical issues is this in between phase that was free play. That was the kids got home from school, they put their books down, they got a snack, they went outside, they played till it got dark and came back in, and that's not occurring anymore.
Yeah, I would tell parents,
in
get
the
your
way
kids
it used
outside.
to.
Go. Go.
They probably don't know what they would do.
And so
probably.
And so all of the things that you were, Mikki said, all those things that you were kind of coming around the outside of, are I don't want to say solved. You speak to this so much better than I do. So.
They can be addressed so thoroughly through opportunities for free play. Through that, just what we think of as the old school, just what you said, coming home and going down the street to play with other kids and experiment and do things, and the learning that's in there. And that the other thing I was thinking about when you were saying, you know, how do I get them to not be addicted to this and to want this and to want to move? That there's that natural serotonin. Is it serotonin?
Yeah.
Right? From movement. And until they get that the first time and the second time and the third time and they realize it makes them feel good, they're not going to become addicted to that. But that's what we want them to do. So getting them just through enough of the first experiences I think we can hope that, like you had a really good suggestion about team and partner workouts, that might help engage them and get them into that cycle where they start to go, oh, I feel really good when I work out.
This is what we experience now, and we're kind of starting to experiment with this. It's because we saw that the kids are so socially, let's say, they have so hard socially to get into a new situation now that they need to have daddy or mommy at their side. So we are trying, or we're now communicating with parents that they come with their kid. So we have like kids and parents class, because the parents want their kids to do something, but the kids don't want to play with parents, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, but it makes complete sense.
but with other kids, the idea is that they will get motivated to, okay, I'm not going to be worse than that person, in that sense.
A little competition.
The small kind of, because kids are very good at this, or all human beings, we are good at measuring ourselves all the time, even though we don't say, like, it's not a competition, but somewhere development from somebody who's very much better than me gives me an idea where I can go. And this is kind of, and it pulls everyone forward. Like, so that's why I think this is in business, in athleticism, everything. If you see somebody who is doing something better than you, that becomes like a northern star, that pulls you forward too. And as a leader, you might also be this northern star, but what I wanted to get with that is that in these like small groups, then you can create that journey for somebody, that they see that something is possible that they're not able to do today. And I think one thing that you like, because you planted, you said because you created the kids course for CrossFit, so you planted that seed, which is kind of enormous legacy, I would say, on how many kids that has affected. And also obviously BrandX now that you created also has a profound legacy. And I see also, we talked about this yesterday, but one of my big role models is Kelly Starrett, or the Starretts, that you also know.
They're role models to us as well.
And they created this Stand-Up Kids organization, which is also kind of so telling that, okay, the kids are simply not, they're moving so little, we have to encourage them to walk to school. Or just stand in school for 15 minutes.
It's, as you said, we're old, so we have a lot of sort of history to look back on, and we've lived through this weird change. Both of us are children of the 60s, so what we've seen change, like drastically around the year 2011. When it wasn't just a phone, it became the internet in your pocket, right? So everything changing in that point, the more sedentary nature, and just so much has changed. That now thinking about that, the Stand-Up Kids is got to be there saying, we shouldn't be having kids sit so much at school, because they're sitting on the way to school, they're sitting at school, they're sitting when they get home. They're, when are they going to permanently look like Wally World, sitting a fluffy person in a chair, who can't bend and can't move? That's our job, right? To fix that.
But I also think,
so it's what we think about.
I mean, I don't have kids by myself, and we don't have anything in the gym right now. So, but sometimes I also see, like, I have a lot of teachers in my gym, that sports teachers, and they tell me all the problems also. Like this, but the problem is like also Christopher said, like from here in Sweden, it's sports is more like activities, and compared to like America maybe, and the same also in Germany, that it doesn't get like when they're in school, like the last 2 years now when we had COVID, sports was not important, so they were not allowed to do any sports in school, so there was no like sport at all. And so it's so
I have to bite my tongue.
I'm sorry.
I'm just getting to that angry.
Yeah. And I think like wow, this is such a big problem, like everything. And I think it's amazing what you're doing, and like you also said how much legacy what you have done the last years and everything. But I think there's so big problem how we would get all the kids, because it starts already so early. I mean I'm not the oldest one, but I'm also not the youngest one, but I'm still the one of them that grew up without the phone. So I got my phone when I was like 14, I think I was, because I was riding a lot, and I was riding out in the forest, and I was like, I want to have a phone if something happening. That was my excuse. And I got one, but there was still like no internet, so it was just to make a phone call or maybe a text message. So I still believe that I'm one that didn't grow up with it, but the generation after me, or like 5 years after me, has changed so much, and there are like so big differences, and it gets even worse and worse the whole time. And I mean, as a screen we're talking about, we are going out in the city, and every child is sitting with the iPad in the hand, and I'm like, wow.
I mean, something definitely like I see with grown-ups. I mean, now with the pandemic or with the lockdowns, rather, you could see how fragile people became. Like I've never had so much people with problems, like with back problems, knee problems, and it feels like we have to be a rehabilitation center more than a CrossFit gym, because nobody can lift anything anymore. And but what I saw before that, we got, you know, occasionally some teenagers coming in, and they wanted to start training, and their parents were supporting that, and we're like, awesome, you know, 16-year-old, that's, you know, as a 16-year-old you can basically be prime time. I was thinking, like, when I was 16 playing ice hockey, you know, I was probably the most fittest version of myself, and it went so fast, like everything grew fast. I was strong, I was fast, and I was fearless, you know, I had no fears. And then I got these guys coming in, and they're so weak that they couldn't, you know, they can't do a basic jump, and they can't hip hinge, and stuff like that. And I was like, that was like it just shook my world. And
it's stunning.
Yeah,
it's stunning for someone who has the eye that a coach has to start to see this, and like you said, it makes you angry, it makes you scared. What's going to happen? But we're talking about it.
Yeah, I felt so sorry for them.
We're trying to figure it out, and I think there's a lot of people doing that.
So much
going
potential.
Back to the discussion that we had yesterday's talk.
Yeah.
Base Build Boost is a model for training youth, where our model for training youth, where base is a child learning to control their own body in space.
Yeah.
Build is then applying that to movement and an external object, and finally I can actually train. So you can think of it as teaching, testing, and then finally training. We're having kids come in now who are 16 years old who literally don't know how to control their own body in space. They don't know how, they're not kinesthetically aware. They don't know how to hip hinge, they bend at the SI joint. And they, you know, in the past, you could have them see what I'm doing, and they could replicate it because they understood how to move their body. Now they cannot do that, and then the secondary part of this is proprioception. They don't know where they are, because they don't know where their body is. They don't know where their body is in relation to something else. So, you know, putting a bar in their hand, saying let's go ahead and clean, that's just, they can't control their body. They can't control this other thing. And so how do we go down? How do we break the movements down into these irreducible pieces that we can teach. And this is a pathway for teaching from age 3 to older, but it's also the pathway that I have to teach a 16-year-old. If a 16-year-old comes in and they want to train, well, that's over here. We still have to go, can you control your body? Can you replicate these primal movement patterns? Can we then build from the primal movement patterns, can we actually build movement and teach you how to address and move external objects? And once we get to that point, now we can actually use all of that training to actually train. But there's a process for that now that we didn't have to figure out 10 years ago.
Yeah, we didn't even
think about it.
We didn't see it coming.
And I think that's one of the things that probably made BrandX probably made us. It's an imprint from us in that we never think what we've done is good enough for the kids. So we're constantly looking at, like, we don't think that the BrandX method is done.
Yeah.
This is the way to go. Like, we look at it and go like, this is the best we can do right now. This is what we got. These are the problems we see. This is how we're addressing them. And let's continue to read and figure out what's going on in the world. How's the culture changing? How is that affecting our children? And then how can we change the training to positively affect the things that we see affecting children?
Yeah, I mean, so a bit of like you have some pretty good testimonials from your program. I would say I met your son a couple of years ago, Martin, and
Keegan.
Yeah, Keegan. Sorry, Keegan, and he is he's pretty athletic dude, I have to say. But yeah, and he's been running also gyms, if I understand that correctly, having 300 kids or something like that going on, which was like, okay, this is amazing. But having that, showing that, not everyone has to be as athletic as Keegan, but showing that building that kind of foundation builds. I mean, you can. I don't remember, but I assume his literacy when it comes to sports is all over, right? It's not just that he's strong, but he can also throw a ball. He's been doing all these sports, right?
He just graduated from the fire academy.
Yeah.
And of course they're doing CrossFit some of the time, and so he's been a power lifter for the last several years, very focused on that, getting over 600 pound lifts, and he's very good at it. But now he's now I got to go back to this. But what was his mile time? Do you remember that?
Yeah, he was the first one to do kind of this thing where he I think he was 19 or 20. Deadlifted 500 pounds and went out the door and ran a sub 5-minute mile. Yeah. and he also had a 60-inch standing box jump at the same time.
Yeah.
But I think when you have this this history of movement competency and movement literacy, and you have the history of applying it to different things, like the kids in our programs did, and we're using now Keegan as an example. And Mikki said, he went to this fire academy, basically moving from being a power lifter to now I'm going to go back to doing CrossFit, and hadn't really done a lot of it. And one of the workouts was Helen, so swings, pull-ups, and the 400-meter runs. And I get this text from him, just did Helen in 6:46 or something like that. And the chief said to me, "What the hell? What the hell was that?" And I had to tell him that I've been CrossFitting since I was 10. And so it was kind of funny. But,
but that gives so much confidence in one sense, that putting those pieces of like physical preparedness when you are growing up is so essential for what's going to happen in the rest of your life. And you talked about this in your speech also, is that because your client is actually the parent, like, or the the client is the kid, but the one you need to convince and keep keep confident and educate is the parent, right? And giving those kind of stories to parents, like, hey, what we put in today is gonna be so telling of where this person is gonna go in the future, and be able to go.
We want to provide a foundation, and so for us, like Jeff says, it's never done, because what else do they need? And since everything changes, as we just talked about, that's we have to keep that in mind. What else are they going to need? So we give them that best foundation that they can keep building to get to the pinnacle. And even if the pinnacle, and for 85%, the pinnacle is just, I want to live a healthy life. I want to be able to do the things I choose I want to do. And it's not necessarily sport or a competition or a 6-minute Fran or Helen. But Fran, well, that wouldn't have been so good. But for Helen,
that's my dog. I'm going to be a 6-minute Fran.
But for so many, it's just, I want to be able to move, or I want my child to be healthy. I want them to know that they get all those choices. So for us, it is always going, okay, what do we pack into that foundation to give them?
We think that foundation, there's so much that goes into that, and that's where we kind of live at this. If you think of the foundation as teaching, we live in the dirt. We're old as dirt. I'm old as dirt, and I live in the dirt. What we're trying to accomplish is teaching them the rules of movement, so that they have, if you have the rules of movement, you can apply that to whatever sport, those rules to whatever the rules of the sport are further on. And really what we see with the kids coming out of the program is, they can join a sport, do well at the sport, and then decide, I want to try another sport, try the other sport. And I used the example yesterday of Sarah. So if they came to the discussion yesterday, they'd have that story. Our youngest, the youngest is Duncan. Duncan didn't really want to play sports when he was really young. He just came to the gym and did what we asked him to do, and played around with being fit. And like all of our kids, was the smallest kid in the school when he entered the school. So he went into high school and decided, I want to play rugby, because he's the smallest kid. That's a good sport for the smallest kid in the school to take on. Played rugby. I think it was 2 months, and he was the starting wingman for the team. Played for a couple of years, and then decided his senior year in high school, I want to try out for track. And he thought, so he tried out for track, and he went, I want to pole vault. Well, pole vault's something you need to learn.
True skill.
So he pole vaulted his senior in high school and made the San Diego County finals as a pole vaulter, which, and the coach was like, what just happened? Well, he's able to take the rules of movement and just apply it. Like, you want me to do this with the pole? Okay, I'll do that with the pole. And then he went to college and decided, I want to try out for something. Was going to go out for rowing, and was handstand walking somewhere, and someone said, try out for cheer. Tried out for the cheer team, made the cheer team, was the captain from his sophomore year through his junior year. They came in 4th in the nation in cheer finals. And now he's a rock climber.
Yeah, now it's rock.
So and the point isn't, look how great Duncan is. Duncan's great, but the point isn't that look how great he is. But the point is that's what, if a child understands movement, if a child has that movement competency, they just go, that looks interesting to me, I'm going to do that. And the answer to your question, how do I get kids off the couch and away from the screens, is teach them the rules of movement, teach them to be competent, and eventually they'll be at a point like, rock climbing looks good, I want to try rock climbing. And that looks interesting, but I can do it because I know I can move like that. I can.
Yeah, I think the physical literacy is the key, and this is kind of the thing that, I mean, Kelly Storrett again talks about, and it's movement patterns, right?
Positions.
And we repeat them in so different all these different sports, we just named them maybe different, but it's usually roughly the same. The joint is a joint. It moves in these directions, right? And that's why like gymnastics is so great to see. But obviously, does everyone have to do high level gymnastics? No, it's like that's where I see the beauty in the CrossFit scene is that we don't have the highest level of gymnastics. I mean, because that takes devotion and speciality and so on. And if you want to do it, great. Then we build some foundation for that at least. But having those kind of different external objects to work with and everything is just okay. This translates into so many other sports. And from an egoistic point of view, I wanted to ask, because I know you have more kids and I have 3. My oldest daughter, she is doing jiu-jitsu, but she doesn't like it. She tells me, and I just want her to like endure a bit, because I see that if you keep on doing this a bit, like this is just gonna pay off in the future so much from not being intimidated from somebody close on. In those situations, but also just having this confidence of rolling and falling and whatever. What should I tell her?
You're gonna have 2 different answers, aren't
Probably. So, mom or dad? We definitely had those times. We did martial arts, and we wanted our kids to do that. We wanted to know they knew how to defend themselves, and we had this kind of adherence often. Some of our kids Connor particularly loved martial arts and was amazing at it and just stuck with it. Keegan was like, but he was physically literate enough that he could just hop in and do well. And he was kind of in and out, and then at some point said, I just don't want to do that anymore. And we could tell he really didn't want to do it anymore. We had to make a decision. Was he at the point that he'd learned the lessons that we thought were most important yet? Right? And then Duncan was
phenomenal.
He would just try. He's a super taster. The kind of person who just wants to try something, and then I mastered that. I want to try something else. So there were times that he stopped doing things that I was sorry he'd stopped, just to move to the next one, just because I saw so much potential. So I guess my answer would be how to handle that is it would be the amount of time I think that I would let pass with them saying I just don't want this anymore. So I wouldn't want it to become something that then they saw as a punishment, because then it's just going to play against what your goal is, which is that exposure. So maybe a little bit of a time where they're saying, I'm not sure I want to do this, and if you don't see a resurgence in interest, that something caught them there, then maybe move them to the next thing.
And the dad's going to have a different answer.
Yeah, dad's
I think it's important that everybody's able to defend themselves, boy or girl. I think it's really changes who you are, and the ability to have frank and open discussions with people who are angry with you. Like I'm able to talk with you because I know what it's like to get hit in the head, and I'm fine with that if we have this discussion. So I think it's really important to have that discussion. So when the kids started coming to us, like Duncan didn't want to quit because he didn't like it anymore. He wanted to try something else. So I don't want to do this anymore. I want to box and I want to do stick fighting. Okay, we'll try those things. Keegan I don't like this anymore. And so for me it was, can you defend yourself? Do you know what it's like to get hit and fight back? And can you stand there? I'm going to, I need you to get to X belt here. And then once you do that, you're done, because you'll have those skills. And so having that discussion, 2 things. One was have that discussion, understanding that what your goals are, and that's just for me, that was just me being a dad. Like, these are the tools you're going to need as an adult person, and I want you to have them. So I'm going to be a dad, and you're going to have to do the things I ask you to do, because that's what I'm asking you to do as your father. And then secondly, but layer on something. What do you want to do? He wanted to play soccer, so we bought him some stuff that he could do at home. And we put those soccer goals up, and I didn't practice martial arts with him at home. I came around and kicked the ball around with him at home. Even though I was a martial arts instructor, it wasn't come home and we're going to do the thing you don't want to do. We did that at the martial arts school, and you're going to do that. You want to do this, let's go do this together, and have you enjoy the movement and the fun of kicking the ball around, and that's...
I think so. Something that kind of I'm hearing is that, and something I maybe self-reflecting about is that it also comes down to what attention you give yourself as a parent. You talked about this. Parents like to give their kids activities, but how involved are you in those commitments, right? And if I'm not there as a parent in jiu-jitsu, well, how important can it be, right? So I'm kind of seeing that from that, or I'm hearing a bit of that kind of, and obviously, like, I totally agree. I think being able to defend yourself is, and I never did. I did some, but I have never done really well martial arts. But the importance of just having that kind of awkwardness that it can bring, it is also like being literate in those kind of situations, right? And I had this discussion with a self-defense woman. She has like self-defense shops for women only. She was like, no, your daughter should not be with those boys, because that's a girl doesn't like that, And I was like, and I could understand the argument, but I was also thinking, how much are you mirroring? Because I know she had trauma from like real trauma, not from the jiu-jitsu, but now you're kind of mirroring something that bad that has happened. And I'm thinking, but if you don't practice rolling with boys, well, how are you going to react in this real situation if you've never done it?
I don't know. One of the things I think that was stunning for us was watching the young kids come out of your class, and watching these physically literate young ladies who were, moving into the preteen teen class. So they'd work with Mikki in the younger class and come into the preteen teen class in my class, and they're 11 to 12, 13 years old coming into my class, and crushing 11, 12, and 13-year-old boys, and really a mindset difference now. Like there is nobody telling them, well, you can't do it because you're a girl. It's coach saying, get up there and let's do 10 pull-ups, and it doesn't matter that they're a boy or a girl. I'm saying I'm going to do 10 pull-ups, and they do the 10 pull-ups, and they can run faster than the boys, and they can lift more than the boys, and that changes the way they think of themselves on down the line. Now, whether or not that applies to jiu-jitsu, it was just something interesting for me to watch these young ladies.
Super empowering for them to have this moment where physiology didn't make it harder for them, right? Where all of a sudden the boys have 40 pounds of muscle that they don't have, and they're competing. There's that moment in time where it's a little bit more of a level playing field, and they could see themselves as winning.
Our first couple of fitness competitions, that we did, we started, I think it was like 11 years old, and we had like 11 to 12-year-old, and it was just 11 to 12-year-olds. Like, I didn't care if you were a boy or girl. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to lift.
We didn't have to divide it.
And there were, young girls who won because they were stronger, faster, and more fit than those. And I don't know. We've come a long way away from the original discussion. But
that always happens to us.
But I think the original discussion is, there's 2 points. One is, what does she learn from working with the boys, and then your question of the person she's going to have to deal with is likely, an aggressor is going to likely be a male, so having to deal with that is something that if you learn to do it, then this is just something I've learned to do.
But also kind of seeing that, because most likely, again, it's going to be or hopefully not, but the aggressor is usually going to be male. But it's also kind of, in one sense, that because there's so much talk about, dividing genders, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time as we're talking about equality, but we're constantly just dividing everything, which I think is, in one sense, it's sensitive in doing it, but in one sense, it's also just lunacy. Like we need to just understand that we can be in the same room together, that we can have our awkwardness together, we can be as strange as we need to be together. Because hey, that's how it's going to be in the future life, all right?
You're from Berlin, then it's even worse.
Yeah, it's even worse. But I don't want to steal too much of your time. But I just wanted to kind of land this a bit into then for people that are, want to do something with kids and so on. Like one good place to then start for having to avoid a lot of mistakes would probably be to actually contact you. So because you have done so much, you have so much experience, of course, and tested so many methods. So what have you seen has been the biggest mistake that most gyms do, that you're like, you should have just done the BrandX Method?
Maybe you should go first.
My thing is, the first thing you kind of alluded to is being educated. Most of the biggest mistakes we see people make are, well, I have a certification, an adult certification. I work with adults, and now I'm going to drop this down on the kids. And it is either too militaristic or too harsh, or they go, well, I'm going to make it silly and fun, and they're not making the progress that they can make. And if they're not making the progress that they can make, then the parents are going to see that as an activity. You're asking about the gym; they're going to see it as an activity, something I drop my kids off for once in a while. And then that further makes it so that they don't make progress, and the gym never thrives. So if you're talking simply about the gym side of this thing, what you want is a thriving program. We want a thriving program because that means that we want thriving programs because it means kids are being affected. But a thriving program also means a consistency in the kids coming, that they're seeing progress, and you're making good revenue out of the program.
Because it won't last.
If
a coach is undervalued, right? And then that's tragic, because you might even have kids that are there that are loving it, but not enough kids to pay the coach enough that they want to stay or can see this as a career. So that can really change things, right? So for us, the ultimate goal is always how many kids can we help.
Yeah.
So we want gyms to be successful. We do phone calls. People text us in the middle of class as this is happening. We answer everything we can. We do. So we're always there to help. You don't have to be like, well, I did your education before you'll talk to me. It's just not like that. We're willing to talk to people and help them, but of course we want them to use our program. We have a really cool new thing which we call Plug and Play, which is a happy customer called it BrandX in a box. So it's everything, education and programming and all the things together for a low monthly cost, so they don't have to go, I have to do this long education first, and then I have to learn how to program, and they're overwhelmed by the amount of it. You go, here, we're going to give you all of it. We'll do little meetings, we'll do mentoring, we'll talk to you about it and make it work.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Because that's also something I see is that, like, as I'm working as a mentor for Two Brain, I also see that gym owners have so many ideas, and we get overwhelmed with all these ideas, and we try to, like you said when we talked to Kalida, it's like, we think that we have all these different projects, and then we try to push all them at the same time, and
It didn't work.
But
no focus and then simplify.
So it's very easy to, when you have all these like projects going at the same time, you may start the kids program and the nutrition course, and then you have Olympic lifting club, and then you want to have a special retreat going on. I don't know, but the kids class then might be, you have to prioritize your time. So in that sense, I see the value of having that kind of mentoring then in actually getting that done, right?
Yeah.
And as you said, like if you make it successful, that's going to create revenue.
Yeah.
That means you're going to be able to have more kids that you're going to help, instead of having this constant. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think one of the biggest issues or struggles for many gym owners is just like when regular coaches, it's keeping your coaches, because how is this? It's not a sidekick job to do this with the kids. I mean, it can be a part-time job, I understand that, but it's not like who likes kids? Hey, could you come in on Fridays, just do this class?
Unfortunately, a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And they're not successful.
Yeah,
and they're not
and
successful.
they're not the successful ones.
That coach quits after 2 months, and then you have to have a new one. And
I think, not to go too long on it, but what we try to do with the mentoring is fill in the pieces that are specific to working with kids. So if you're understanding business, if you're really running a good business, or they're working with someone like Two Brain, what we're trying to do is come in and go like, okay, you have all these things with Two Brain. What are those things that are specific to working with kids that we can fill in for you, and then we can give you a stepwise process to just start this thing, but understand that it's a business, and that really is one of the things like with Two Brain that you come back from. It's like, people don't. It isn't just I have an hour here and I'm going to just run some kids in here. Like that's never going to be successful. I'm just, I'm going to just run Zumba over here for an hour. I mean, setting it up so that the business side of the youth programming is successful. You almost then you avoid so many of the downfalls that you see happen. And you see it with other gyms. You see it with the regular gym, that they didn't set it up correctly. They didn't set up and so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. No, I think that's very promising, because I think that makes it also. It's just going to make more success for those gyms that do that. So that sounds very promising, because that's the kind of experience that Two Brain had, or Chris Cooper, when he did it, was he started with giving like a home, like, here's what you do. This is your, 12 weeks program to start with at home, and fix these step-by-step things at the business. But people didn't do it. They bought the course or whatever, and then they never took the steps.
Yeah.
So I think the mentoring part there is very valuable to actually take those steps. It's not enough just to buy the course. You actually have to implement.
Yeah.
So, and that's just going to make, again, that program successful, and more kids getting more success. And I got a very good idea just during our talk now is I need to probably promote like a foundational promotion to solve this problem now, after lockdowns and so on, to get these people that are so scared now getting back to fitness. And I'm basically is that the physical preparedness is so low that putting them, Para was talking about this, like they have these 30 minutes sessions now, because people can't handle an hour anymore. It's, so
What?
yeah, so
Wow.
so
Wow.
and we also have that because we also said if we do an hour with these clients, they don't get value from that hour because after half an hour they are smoked. And it's not that we're like, okay, we're going to do Fran today. No, it's like, okay, we're going to do some hip hinges, some lunges, and so on. And after 10 minutes, they're like, my legs are shaking, and the body's like, they need to drink water, and it's like,
It's shocking.
so, okay, maybe we need to, have that message out there to get those. That was just an idea I got from, and it has nothing to do with kids really, or youth, but I think it applies to grown-ups now too, because they need to have this kind of soft landing now before it takes off. So, any last words, Malin? You have any?
No, I think it's what you said, like what you were now talking about, that if the grown-ups and the parents starts to move again, then the kids also start. I can see or observe that a lot of times that when the parents are active, the kids are coming, and you have a lot of experience with that, and I think that is important.
I also had an epiphany I'm going to share, and it's for my daughter who does the jiu-jitsu. Is in a boxing gym, so I'm just going to try to arrange and organize that I can do that, because they also have a gym, so you can kind of do some weight training and so on. So I'm thinking of I could actually join. I could do my training during the time. So we're gonna go into the gym together. I can train, and we can high five after training. And also, I always bring all our kids. So we in the neighborhood. So we're usually 5-6 kids that I drive. So so this could be a good commitment for me in the future. So thank you for everything you've done and the time, and also for giving me some new ideas to pursue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you.